All right, hi everybody. Thank you for joining our monthly Eloqua user group meeting. I'm your host, KP. I have a couple other folks on the line that will be presenting, so we have a pretty good agenda for you guys today. Let me share my screen and show you what that is. And my assistant just walked into the room. Actually, the middle dog there, Winnie, will be helping me present today. Thank you, Winnie. So I'm Karen, like I mentioned, or KP as many call me. I've been at Sojourn since the company started about 6 years ago and been using Eloqua for the last 16 years now. And a marketer first using it and then switched over to consulting, worked at Eloqua, was there when Oracle bought them. Lots of fun stuff has happened in my career. Actually, it really has. But anyway, so I was asked about a year ago to put together this user group. Actually, it was right around the time that COVID hit. It was interesting. It was a couple weeks after I was in person at the Boston user group meeting. So things quickly changed, but here we are. I hope everybody's staying safe and healthy. I am now in Nashville with my pups and partner, and honored to be putting together our Eloqua user group meeting for you all each month. So thanks for registering. We've got how many people here right now? About 50 and 160 registered. Pretty cool. We get that about every month. So just to give you an idea of what this webinar is doing as far as, I guess, numbers for performance. So anyway, here's our agenda. I'm going to talk real quick about the mistake I made in our Eloqua instance today for this meeting. And then we'll dive into just quick 3 reminders, let you guys know about 3 important things, or I'm going to say, not let you know, but remind you. I'm guessing you guys already know about them. And then we're going to have Scott Lang from the Oracle product management team. He's going to go through the Eloqua 21A release. If you didn't attend the meeting earlier this week, or even if you did, to me, I like to get the information more than once to really absorb it. But anyway, he'll walk us through the latest, greatest stuff happening and coming into Eloqua. And then I'm going to change it over to Phil. He's a Sojourn senior consultant who's going to walk through some tips on automating your webinars with Eloqua. And last but not least, we'll open it up to any questions you guys have or tips that you might want to share, webinar related, whatever it might be. It doesn't have to be about webinars, but and if you have any questions along the time that we're together today, please pop them into the Q&A in Zoom. The chat is nice for like going back and forth to communicate with each other, but we would prefer, because it's easier to answer the questions and mark them as answered, or talk about them at the end. And then last thing here is this is being recorded. So if you do speak, yeah, you can swear, but maybe not, I don't know. And we will make sure you get the recording this afternoon. So if you have to pop out early, no worries. And first things first, so I did make a mistake this morning. I guess maybe like Ross, rest in peace, Ross, the painter. We don't make mistakes, we just make happy accidents. Sure, I mean, whatever you want to call it, I made a mistake. So apologies again. Most of you should have received, or actually everybody here should have received my sorry email and correction email. We've actually, it's interesting, I've never been on this side of it. I have advised clients on how to recover from when they've done a similar mistake. But anyway, and I've also just watched as a consumer, I'm sure it's happened to all of us, where we get an email and then a couple minutes later or an hour later, that same company sends us an email and says, oops, sorry, we sent you the wrong something. You really can't get Eloqua for $10 a year or something like that. So I just want to show you guys what I did really quick. In our Eloqua, we have an automated campaign, as you might imagine, for this Eloqua user group meeting to manage when people get in the campaign after being registered, to remind you guys, just those 2 reminder emails and the follow-up emails. Well, anyway, I copy this every month, and I didn't update this little wait step right here where it checks to see it's supposed to wait until after this webinar or meeting is done. And well, anyway, I had a date set in like November. So of course, Eloqua didn't see that or have the logic. It's funny, we can only automate and tell it to do so much. And then there is a human element that takes over where we have to QA, test things, you know, be detail oriented. One of my flaws. Anyway, so that's what happened. It was a honest mistake, but you guys did get probably if you hadn't gotten it before, another follow-up email about our November user group with the recording from that and invitation to our December user group. So ignore that, delete that, and you will get a fresh follow-up email with today's recording. So that was lovely. So yeah, just lessons learned to make sure to QA things constantly. Ideally, have someone else QA your work before a campaign is activated if you have the bandwidth or people to do so. I know not everybody does. That's part of our challenge here is we're like, wearing multiple hats, which I think a lot of you guys are too. Own your mistake. I think people try to be like, Eloqua did it. Eloqua did something wrong. And it's like, well, no, if you can see that you did it, it's okay. Things happen. As people say, shh, it happens. And I think the number one thing for me is, and somebody replied, thank you. Someone did reply and say, hey, don't worry about it. Mistakes happen. And they appreciated that I sent out that correction email very quickly. So that is the one tip that we do give our clients is, okay, you made a mistake. Let's figure out the language to send pretty darn quickly to let people know that was a mistake, especially if you gave them like the wrong, I don't know, discount code or information that could be legally not so good. So anyway, let's move on. And let's see here. Quick reminders. So if you have Eloqua integrated with Salesforce CRM today, then you probably already know this, that the Oracle support team will no longer answer questions or issues you have related to the native integration starting February 1st, which is right around the corner. So if you're not using the Salesforce integration app with Eloqua, we recommend it. You can use the native integration. It will continue to work. People have had misunderstandings with that. They're not turning that off anytime soon, but eventually I would guess Oracle will, and my guess is in a year or two. But nonetheless, you want to typically be using the latest, greatest technology that is available with Eloqua, even if it's not perfect, because the native integration isn't perfect either. So anyway, if you have the native integration and you're like, oh crap, I didn't know this or I forgot about it, you can use a tool in Eloqua, in the integration app actually, to quickly set up the new integration. So it takes all your auto syncs you have. Most people have at least 10, and those become imports in the app. And then you can also take those external calls in the native integration and quickly click of a button, create actions in the integration app. It works for most things. It doesn't work for everything. So it won't set up the entire integration in the integration app for you. And there are nuances to it. Anyway, but I did want to make sure people know about that little hidden gem because it does save time. I use that in our own Eloqua Salesforce integration and then went back in to what that migration tool did and checked everything to make sure like the field mappings were good and tested them. So anyway, next thing, 21A release is coming out soon. You can see the dates here, so you can kind of ignore 21B, C, and D. If you didn't know, Eloqua has new features coming out or bug fixes, the combination of those things every quarter. So, a calendar year quarter. So the first will be on February 12th for Pod 6, and you can see the dates here for 21A. It goes over, what is that, like a 2-week span, 3-week span? Anyway, you get the idea. And thankfully for us today, we're very lucky to have Scott, who's going to go through the 21A release key features, more focused on asset management, which is some stuff that I was as a user, like, I can't wait for this stuff to come. It's going to help to keep Eloqua more organized and in reporting, easier, various benefits to what he's going to share with us today. And then last quick reminder is our next user group meeting. This meeting is going to be on Thursday, February 18th. We're going to bump it back to 11 a.m. Eastern time, 10 Central. Geez, I think that's 4 o'clock GMT. That was my subject, but it's not anymore. My brain does not do it well. Anyway, so we will try to stick to that as best as we can every third Thursday of the month at 11 Eastern time. We're trying to keep it consistent for you guys. And that's the feedback we got from the users. We did a couple of questions in our poll last month. We got feedback that you all did, for the most part, like the majority, like this day and time. So, and meeting once a month. So I will send out an invitation to that user group meeting. We don't have the agenda planned yet. That's my lucky job to do that. If you would like to present, or if you are thinking about maybe you want to present, I can help you to figure out if next month makes sense, or maybe later this year, and also talk about what topic. Usually our presenters speak for 10 to 20 minutes. So hopefully that helps give you an idea of what we'd be looking for. And with that, I'm going to hand it over to Scott Lang, again from Oracle's CX Marketing product team. He's going to walk us through the 21A release specific to asset management updates. So Scott, let me stop sharing my screen.
Absolutely. Thanks, Karen. Appreciate it. Hi, everyone. So let me just share my screen here. And then, so a couple things did want to mention. So Karen, it's great that you were able to share that that oopsie or mistake, if you will, because it's as nice as it is to, always hear success stories and things that happen in real life. It is nice to hear where, there has been, a mistake made, because as you mentioned, everyone does make them. So it's nice to kind of know that, hey, everyone's human, but it's nice to be able to learn from it and see how you recover from it and prevent it in the past. So I think that was great. I do appreciate you sharing that for sure.
Thanks.
Yeah, absolutely. The regarding the 21A release, so as Karen had up there, so it is coming up. You'll notice that it's over 3 weeks this time. This is specific only to the 21A release, so it won't be. It'll go back to normal as we move forward with release as well. We did have the official release briefing on Tuesday of this week. If you weren't able to join, definitely I highly recommend going to Topliners, viewing the recording and just reviewing the material there as well. There's a few product notices. There's a lot of information about upcoming features that are coming as well. One of the things regarding the native sales app there as well that was touched on. I know there was, I did see some discussions going around in Topliners of some questions about the program builder end of life, which is not true, not being end of life. But again, that it is mentioned in the release briefing as well. So there's a lot of good information on there, and it does give you an opportunity to post any questions or thoughts that you had on that Topliners page as well, so that the rest of the product team is able to see them and answer them and get questions out to you that you need as well. So again, if you attended the release briefing on Tuesday, some of what I'll go over is a repeat of what you've heard. I'm mostly touching on the asset management things that we're doing, as without the rest of the team here to focus on some of their key areas. I wanted to focus on that. It actually came up. I emailed Karen and just let her know some of the things that were coming up with asset management, and I guess it worked out to be perfect timing prior to the user group. And so here's where we are. So I've been with Eloqua for just over 2 years now, so mostly focusing on a lot of our asset management areas and enhancements. But I've also been working on a lot of changes to our forms area as well, and some of the integrations with some of our other CX products, such as our CX content product that we have with Eloqua, and some of the future integrations that we have coming up as well. So most of the focus today, again, will be on a few of the asset management things, but again, you can view the entire release briefing on Topliners. All the information is there, so definitely highly recommend touching on that and going to review that if you can. So obviously safe harbor with everything that we talk about. A lot of it is coming with the 21A release, but some things in controlled availability and always possibility of future changes and updates as well. So just always keep that in mind. The first area that I want to start with, so adding on to a lot of the work that we've done with archiving over the past, I guess about 1.5 years it's been. So with 21A, we're going to now allow the ability to archive folders. This will be sticking with the email and form areas specifically. So in the past, as you've seen through some of the past releases, we've introduced the ability to archive individual emails and forms. Any of those items that are archived, they'll continue to function in any active campaigns as they would now. So emails will continue to send, forms continues to accept submissions. It's really to help clean up your instance, especially in the searching aspect. And if there's emails and forms that you don't want to be used in future campaigns, but they're still active, archiving them is a great solution to that because they don't show up in your regular search anymore. So it's a great functionality for that, and it does allow you to clean up some of the areas in the instance as well, especially with any of the emails and forms that may have existing dependencies. We all know how challenging it can be to clear out those dependencies and be able to actually delete the assets. So the archiving gives you an opportunity to clean that up and kind of reduce some of the noise without having to worry about the dependencies at that time. So with the folder archiving, this will allow you to archive an entire folder, and it'll archive any of the subfolders that are in it and any of the assets as well, so that you can do it in one very efficient action instead of having to do them one by one. So I know this is a big plus for a lot of customers that I've talked to that, already have their, kind of fake archiving folder that they've created, and they label it in capital letters, archive, do not touch. The only problem with that is when you go to search for assets, they still appear in your search, and you really have no way to know that they've been archived. So in this way now, we are given the ability to just, if you have that existing folder already created with everything archived in there, you can just archive that folder and you're done, everything's moved on. If you have things separated by, campaign and years and things like that that you no longer need, you can just now grab those folders specifically and just archive them. And obviously you can restore them or unarchive them if you have to for any reason. We do have a max limit in place of how many you can archive. It's fairly high, as you can see, is 20,000, which includes subfolders and assets within it. So highly unlikely that that most customers will reach that limit at all. But obviously having a limit in there is important, just from a performance standpoint, but also just to prevent anybody from doing anything that maybe they shouldn't and archiving way more than they should at the time, and just kind of putting everything in one folder. So it's definitely going to be an efficient way to clean up any of the assets that you have. So this is part of a controlled availability program. You can put a request in through through support to get that enabled for you, and it's no real restrictions on the program at all. So if it's something that you want to be included in, definitely contact support, and they can get that enabled for you and get you into the program so that you can start utilizing that new feature. Second area that I wanted to touch on is around form submissions. So this was something that was previously in controlled availability, probably for about the last year. It used to be titled form visibility. So we've made some changes to the wording on it just to better reflect the functionality itself and what it actually does. So it really just allows you to help control form submissions. So by default, this is on for all forms. So forms will accept submissions. We've had a number of customers in the past that want to be able to disable any submissions coming in for older forms that maybe they can't delete. Number of reasons that they just want to be able to turn off submissions being allowed. So you can now, within individual forms, you can toggle that off and disable the form submissions. So the forms will still be available. You can still get to them via the URL if you have it. But when you go to submit it, there'll be a message that comes up and just lets you know that this form is no longer accepting submissions. So it gives you an efficient way, again, to be able to turn off those submissions for a form if you need to do so. The next and the last two areas that I'll touch on. So these are two that were not included in the release briefing on Tuesday. These are part of a limited controlled availability program that we have. So you're getting a little bit of a sneak peek into these today. If it is something that you want more information on, you have some interest in, want to see if you're a good fit for either of these programs, feel free to reach out to your account manager to get more information. I'm in constant communication with them, so we can set up some time to discuss. If you don't have an account manager assigned to your account, feel free to reach out to Karen or myself, and we can definitely get you some more information on this. And again, make sure that you're a good fit for this, and see if it's something that you want to be added onto the list for kind of our next wave of the program. So the form spam protection, something that we've been working on for a little while, obviously in high demand from a lot of customers, and becomes more so, it seems, with every passing month and year, as spammers seem to get more sophisticated and find ways to cause havoc and and headaches for all of us. So this is, again, as part of our limited CA program that we have. So what we've done is, if this is enabled for you, you'll have the ability within each individual form to enable the spam protection. Obviously, again, with what I mentioned about spammers becoming, just finding new ways every year, It's hard to put anything in place that 100% eliminates spamming, but as we put this in place, it definitely helps to reduce it and gives you a way to fight back against them. And we will definitely continue to review this and enhance it and make changes as we go forward to it. So if it is, if the feature is enabled for you, the spam protection, it'll be off by default for all forms. So you'll have to be part of the program, but also kind of opt in for each form as well to make sure that you want the protection in place for that form. So when it's enabled from a high level, it's going to do a couple of things. So it's going to add in a timestamp validation token, and it's going to add in a hidden honeypot field as well. The timestamp validation, for the most part, it's going to do a validation on how quickly the form is submitted from the time that it was loaded. So if the form is submitted under the threshold from when it was loaded, it'll be marked as spam. Right now we have that set at 3 seconds. So if there is a bot that is trying to do a mass spam on one of your forms, and they're submitting these, as you can understand, very quickly, we will capture those as spam. They will be stored in a separate table as well. So we do separate them. They don't create contacts in your Eloqua instance as well, which is another nice thing. And then with the hidden honeypot field, we will add in a honeypot field in there, obviously not visible through the UI, nothing that gets filled in, nothing that the end user can see. It's hidden and it's on the back end, and we will validate that on submission as well. So if any reason that field has been removed or changed or populated with a value, again, we will mark that as spam, assuming that it is a bot filling everything in from filling in all the fields from the back end and not really validating anything against the UI. So those will be two things that'll be put in place and checked. We do use existing Eloqua form fields as well. So when you are looking, if any of the spammers are looking through the code, it's not easily identifiable because it's not labeled as, a honeypot field or anything related to spam. We specifically use existing form fields. So for example, we might use address 3 as that hidden honeypot field. Basically what it does as well is when you enable it, it'll go through and validate against any of the form fields that are being used on a form to make sure that it's not using an actual field from the form as the honeypot field. And it just goes through and does that check and grabs an appropriate field that it can use for that honeypot field. We'll also be doing some validation on blind form submission links within emails as well. So we will be doing this through authenticity hashing in the URL. So we'll be adding and storing the hash to the URL, and again on validation, we'll be checking that, and if that validation fails, it will be marked as spam as well. So these are 3 of the key features that are going to be added in there. There's a few things that, and again, as part of the limited CA program, there was a few specific customers that we wanted to get this in and get it testing with, as they were having some extreme problems with it. Few of the things to consider if you're using forms externally on an external web page, obviously the HTML will need to be updated if the spam is enabled. Very similar if you're changing any form fields currently and using an existing form field. So that is one area that you'll need to consider as well if this is something that you enable or get into the program down the road. So definitely something we're very excited about. I know a lot of customers are as well. And again, we're looking forward to having some additional enhancements in this and future releases, and also expanding the customers that are in the CA program as we move forward. And then the last item I wanted to touch on as well is, again, it's part of a limited CA program that we have. So again, very similar to the spam protection. If it's something that you want more information in, reach out to your account manager if you have one, or Karen or I, and we can definitely talk more about this as well. And again, make sure that you're a good fit for this. So we are introducing this to allow support for multiple branded domains within a single Eloqua instance. So you'll be able to have up to 10 brands in there. Few things to consider around this as well. As far as best practices is making sure that to move forward with this feature, you want to make sure that you have dedicated IP addresses for each brand. Ideally, you want to have them secure as well. as we're starting to get in more of the concerns around mixed content being blocked from browsers. I think everybody for the most part is aware and trying to push towards having secure branded domains whenever possible. Even if you're not running into any concerns right now, you will start to down the road as browsers start to enforce a lot of these mixed content rules a lot further as well. So the dedicated IP addresses and the secure domains are definitely two things that you want to consider if this is a program that you want to talk about further and get on the list with. So the brands, the application domains and image domains. So you can have the multiple brands, and you can have application and image domains specifically set up for the individual brands as well. You will have visibility into brands and your domains within the UI. Now, this is something that I did touch on in the what are we, I guess, 20D release back in November. The visibility around this in the email default screen was something we introduced back then so that we could start to provide more visibility. Previously, if you wanted to know what your brands were and how everything was set up, you needed to call into support to get that information. Now we've made that visible to you so you can see what's set up, how it's configured, what your default brand is as well. And then as those are set up, if the support for the multiple brands is enabled for you as part of the CA program, in the email editors within the settings, you'll see an option drop down for brands, and within there you'll be able to select the brands that you have so that you can apply the application and image domains to that email that you have in place. So along with the visibility, now you're going to have the ability to select between brands when you're creating your emails as well, so that you can have your domain set up specifically for the brand of the email that you are creating. So again, it's something that we've had a lot of conversations with some customers that do have multiple brands that are struggling with branding their emails in an efficient way and being able to support those brands as well. So this is something that we were pretty excited about to get into place. Similar with the form spam protection as well, there's some additional enhancements that we have planned for future releases, so we can continue to enhance this, but also continue to open up the CA program itself to more customers as we move forward. So with that, I will stop there. Those are the main things I wanted to cover today. Again, if there's anything outside of this, these items that I covered, or if you haven't seen the release briefing from earlier in this week, I definitely highly recommend going to Topliner so that you can view that, and it'll give you a good opportunity to get any questions answered as well from the product team on that Topliner's page.
Awesome. Great. Thank you very much, Scott. There are quite a few questions for you. I think there's 4 right now in the Q&A, and there's one that came through the chat about each of your topics. I think there's like 5 questions total. If you could take a peek at those, and if any of them make more sense for us to chat through or answer live, let me know over chat, and I can make sure there's time at the end of this meeting to do so.
Absolutely.
Thank you. All right, so exciting stuff, guys. I remember I talked to Scott. I think it was Scott, not this past year, but I think it was the year before that, the summertime, when you guys were looking at these asset management features, and it's a while coming, but they're here, close to GA for most of them, but not quite. Anyway, you went over all that, but I'm just glad to see that Eloqua is evolving, because we start to see like the new integration for Salesforce and other features coming out, but then sometimes it comes back to these more basic organizational features that really help us as users to have a better experience with Eloqua and better manage it. So thanks for making this stuff come to life.
Yeah, absolutely.
The form spam bot prevention is something that I think somebody will ask me about at least once a month, and how we as Sojourn recommend solving for it. My short answer now is going to be, get into the CA program if it's still open with Oracle for this feature, and eventually when it's GA to leverage the feature. So if it meets your needs. I mean, there was a question that came in about like, well, what if somebody submits the form really fast because it auto-populates? So we'll cover that. But anyway, there are some things where occasionally a Eloqua out-of-the-box feature doesn't meet your needs, but hopefully for most folks that feature will. It's good to see it in there.
Yeah, and that's it's a great question. It's a good point, and again, it's part of our process of having it as a controlled availability as well, so that we can consider things like that and make changes and adjust as we need to as we go forward. It's always a fine line of how long you wait to get a feature out as opposed to, waiting until there's too much done with it. But you want to be able to get it out there so that customers that are struggling in an area with this, that they have something in place. And there's always, with any product features and things, there's always room for enhancements and changes as marketing changes in general and spammers change and all that kind of changes and evolves going forward. So it's the features are never quote unquote done. They're always evolving. There's always something new that comes in, which is always the exciting part of it. So.
Yep, it sure is. And somebody did just ask if you want to, as a user, get added to a CA feature, isn't the best way to do that to log a support ticket to request getting into it?
It normally is for most controlled availability programs. So with the folder archiving, yes, definitely go through support. It's open to anybody that wants to enable it, so you can get that enabled right away. With the multiple branding and the form spam, there's a few other things to consider with it as with these programs, and it's a deeper conversation is warranted for sure. When you look at the multiple brands, for instance, you want to have those dedicated IP addresses set up. You ideally want to have your domain secure as well. So it's not something that you just want to flip on and start running with, because if you've got multiple domains in there or brands and you damage one of the brands and they're sharing the IP address, now you've damaged all of your brands as well. So there's some things to consider just a little bit further with these two features specifically. So it definitely warrants an additional conversation on some of these.
Okay, thanks for clarifying that. I appreciate that.
Absolutely. We just want to make sure that anybody that goes into the program again has all the information that they need, so that we can have it set up to work as efficiently and best as possible for their situation. And as we move forward and continue with enhancements and things that change from the initial CA program, it's something that it gradually and naturally opens up to more and more customers, and eventually gets us to that GA state, which is where we always want to get to.
Yep. We love that, especially when it's a feature we've been waiting for, and it's even better than it was in the beginning of the controlled availability. So
yeah.
Excellent. All right. Well, thank you very much again, Scott. We appreciate it. And now we're gonna turn the mic and stage here over to Phil Boyden on our Sojourn team. So Phil, we'd love to have you walk us through the tips you put together on automating webinars with Eloqua. So here we go. If you don't mind introducing yourself, and then we'll.
Yeah, sure. So yeah, hi everyone, I'm Phil Boyden. I've been with Sojourn for around 7 weeks. And the reason I thought about putting the webinar thing together here is because during that time, I think I've been in my own home for about 15 days. So I'm based in the south of England on the coast, and one of my daughters is at school in Guernsey. And because of the restrictions on the Channel Islands, she can't come and visit and go back and get to school, because you have to self-isolate for 14 days. So everything I've been doing recently has been online. Kind of Zoom, Teams, wherever I happen to be, I'm trying to set up another meeting somewhere. So I thought, let's have a look at automating that stuff through Eloqua. So yeah, if you click on to the next one, Karen, thanks. So yeah, basically with Eloqua, there are a lot of solution options for integrating your different webinar platforms. So if you've got an existing solution that you're thinking of bringing in and automating, it's very possible there's already an app out there, but and I got a few showing on the screen there. But obviously there are other webinar platforms available out there as well, so that's not an exhaustive list of the things that integrate to Eloqua. There's a few things, if you're thinking of integrating an existing platform, then have a look at the capabilities, obviously. But if you're thinking of putting a new platform in, then there's a few things that you want to think about when you're doing your Eloqua rollout, and a few things to be on the lookout for. So the next slide basically takes us into a few of the basics that you'd want to have in there. So this top list here is the stuff that I would really want to be on my wish list for making sure an integration app covered. And I'll do a live demo in a little bit. We'll go into Eloqua and have a look at some examples of this. So the first one there is a registration step. So if we're sending out an Eloqua campaign with emails, we're pushing people to a landing page with a form. They can submit the form straight into Eloqua. So we've all that good stuff with the tracking and everything there. And we know exactly what people have done. Once they've submitted the form, a registration step will actually link directly to your webinar platform and push people into that webinar and register them within the platform. But we've already got that information in Eloqua. There's a couple of decision rules there. So as we're flowing through, let's imagine we are allowing them to register directly into the, if we've got people flowing through our campaign, we're wondering if they have registered because they might have circumvented and gone another way through. We can check that as we're going along, and that decision rule will be down the yes or no paths as usual. And the attended decision rule is a really useful one for doing your sort of post-webinar follow-ups. So have they attended? Yes, send them a thanks for coming. If not, maybe a link to other things you've got going on so they can come along and attend something else. And then the feeders are really good. So we've got our usual segment that we might push through to advertise our campaigns, but we can instantly reach out to the webinar platform and find people that either registered for or actually attended previous webinars. So if on a similar topic or feel there's a good crossover, we can have an audience that we know is definitely already interested in that. So that would be my basics to be looking out for in the integration.
I just want to add a little note here, a little tip. We use obviously Zoom. That's what everybody's on right now, in case you forgot. When we use the Zoom feeder for attendees, it does a funky thing to the first name field. It takes whatever you guys logged into this Zoom meeting or webinar as, like somebody actually logged in as TNA, which is funny, a clever person. So that would update your first name field on your contact record in our Eloqua as TNA. So I've had to do manual cleansing of the first name field in Eloqua after that. That was not fun. So just keep in mind, this is where the QA also comes into the picture, where you want to make sure in whatever webinar platform you're using, Zoom or not Zoom, Webex, whatever it is, that when you automate the data coming into Eloqua, make sure you check it before, say, a follow-up email goes out and says, hi, TNA. Probably not what you want to have happen, unless that's really their nickname or initials. But anyway, so just a little tip there.
Thanks, KP.
Yeah.
So the next couple of things, if you click again, hopefully that'll show up. So there's a couple of optional extras. So when you're looking at the different webinar platforms and integrations, some of them have extra capabilities like polls and surveys at the end of webinars. And some of those that have those capabilities, you can also pull that into Eloqua as a custom object. So obviously it's free text, not perfect, but if you've got some questions and that have got a select list linked to them, and you can fire off there and find out what people are interested in. And then the other optional extra that I wanted to pop in was the external activity cloud action. So you can add, once people have attended your webinar, you can actually automate adding that to some external activity. And if we go to the next slide, I can touch on that just a little bit more. So basically this is to do with kind of making sure that everyone's aware of who's come along to your webinar. So if you've got sales guys working in the background, then we have Eloqua Profiler. Eloqua Profiler can, for those of you that haven't used it or seen it, it's an app. It's a sales tool that really sits within Eloqua, and it gives us the image there, to be honest, on the tablet isn't ideal, but the little column to the right of that top thing is what would be a graph. So if this person in the image have been interacting over the past 3 months, for example, then that graph would be kind of like a bar chart all the way along showing those interactions. Profiler automatically shows the activities that Eloqua would know about. So that would be like email sent, email open, email click, form submission, website visits, that sort of thing. But external activities are actually things that Eloqua wouldn't know about. And usually we could upload those directly into Eloqua in the campaigns area. But we can also automate that. So when we've got a webinar and we have got a webinar integration where we can query whether someone had attended that webinar, then we can automatically set their external activity to webinar attended, and that will then show up in Profiler, so the sales guys are aware of everything that contact has been up to while they're working on opportunities over there. Yeah, so I'll move on to a live demo. So if I share my screen. Does that come up, KB? Can you see that okay?
Yep, we can see it.
Perfect. Okay. So for the purists out there, I want to apologize about my long list of just email submitted form down the left, but it's just to get some examples in there of what we might do. So at the top here, starting top left, I've got just a regular segment here that we drag onto the canvas and send out to the first email. But then I've dragged in these two feeders here. So that the one I'm showing as an example here is Zoom. So if we wanted people who had registered for a previous webinar, if I double click into here, click the pencil icon to edit or configure, all we actually need to supply here is the webinar ID of the webinar that we want to check whether those people came to. So you'd fill that in and click save. And it's exactly the same here on the attended one. So go and configure and just supply your webinar ID, click save, and that will automatically drop all the people that registered for whichever webinar you had here or attended this one into your campaign. So we now know we've got definitely interested audience of people flowing through. The way I've set this up here now is I've sent an email and then I've got a submitted form step. For some reason, it likes to drop my name into anywhere I'm allowed to type. So you wouldn't evaluate this for fill days. I don't know why that's there.
Maybe that's the error I made on my campaign.
Just everything was something to do with fill for no good reason at all. So the evaluation period I've put for 3 days. So the moment that someone submits the form, having been sent the email, they'll be dropped up here to the Zoom webinar register step. So I've basically got people flowing down here. If they haven't submitted the form after 3 days, we're resending the email, but your campaign flow can look however you like. So as we come across here in our campaign, we're using that registration option. So that'll integrate direct to the webinar platform. And again, if I click to configure this, all we need to supply again is just that webinar ID. So it's really simple, on condition you know your webinar ID, to set up any of these steps and click save. So at this point, they've been registered not only through the Eloqua form, but they've gone across to the platform. Now here, I've put our first external activity. So the external activity app, you just drag it onto the canvas. And when you come in here, and again, click to configure, it's quite simple. We select the asset type. So on this case, it's a webinar. The activity here, we'd flick down to registered. And then for the sake of naming it, this one may be 2021 January Eloqua user group, something like that, something meaningful for whoever's looking at this against the external activities to understand what we're doing. I've popped that there in the flow just so we can see that they've registered here, and then we sort of clock the fact that they've registered. You might want to leave that until the end, so you split it to those that attended and registered, and it shows up against that date. But for now, I've left it over here. Then got a date comparison here. So depending when they register depends which of the kind of thanks for registering. We might then have, let's say it's too close to the date. So we just literally say, well, there's 1 day to go, and then an hour before. So I've just used that compare dates to make sure people flow the right way. And an error here. So I haven't put another compare date in before sending the 1 day out. So I could happily flow people straight through all of those the way I've set that up now. So Okay, so after the date, we have the 1 hour wait reminder, and then we're at a full day. That's just to make sure that the details have shown up in the platform. So we then go up and we say to Zoom who actually attended. So this is one of the decision rules I was speaking about. The registered decision rule would be a bit redundant here because we know they've already registered because we registered them over here in the flow. So we're just asking if they attended. If they go down the no path, we're going to send out an email saying, sorry that we missed you. But down the yes path, we're going to thank them for coming. And then I've got another external activity where you pop in, set it up. Again, we're going to go for the webinar option. And we're going to say they attended, which came up automatically. And then we stick the same asset name just to make sure there's a good link there. And that's about it, really. So we've got the other options are, I would make a campaign template. If you've got a flow that you know you want to use regularly against your webinars, then set up a campaign template so you can go in and populate that, and some email templates, and that just so it's really quick and easy to get your next campaign up and running. And yeah, that's it from me.
All right. Awesome. Thank you, Phil. And there's a couple questions. Somebody did ask, will there be campaign steps for GoToWebinar available instead of Zoom? Yeah, there are. So each webinar platform like GoToWebinar, Zoom, Webex, they each have apps for Eloqua. They aren't all equal, I will say. Zoom is one of the ones as far as like the apps that we've just shown you, it has more options, but there are some for GoToWebinar. So I'm going to actually share my screen and show you guys the best way to figure out this. Like if I have GoToWebinar, where should I go to figure out what integration I can do with Eloqua?
Yeah.
So let me see if there's a link to the app.
GoToWebinar does actually, it has all of those steps that we've just had a look at there. And it's
Okay.
that particular app is developed by Oracle. So.
Okay. And there's not a link here. This would be something awesome in Eloqua to the app cloud, so apps for Eloqua, but I pulled this up on my screen. I'll pop it into the question the person asked and put it in the chat. But basically, these are the ones that are On24 created, like what Phil just showed, Zoom created for Eloqua, but On24 created these two for the registrations. And so that would be pushing, say you use an Eloqua form to push a registrant to On24. Sorry, this is On24. You want to go to, so anyway, my point was just going to be, you can come to the App Cloud, search for the webinar tool you're using, and you'll start to see the apps that are available. So you can see some of the ones that are related that have come up, like Zoom. So this one is created by Put It Forward, not GoToWebinar. Be careful of that when you're looking at these. That means it's not free, basically. I would always look at the provider. If it's Oracle, it's almost always free. And if it's like the vendor that you're looking for, like On24, GoToWebinar, it'll show it here. So this one's not free. Not to say it's not a great app, it probably is, but I'm a fan of use what's free first and see if it meets your needs. You know, at least try it, test it out, look at it, evaluate it for the very minimum. You can see there's more available here. So anyway, that's where I usually go and myself to get educated on what is available for apps for Eloqua in the cloud marketplace, or I call it the App Cloud, but App Store, whatever you want to call it. And then if you did want to add it to your Eloqua, any of these, so for instance, you get app, you have to be signed in to Oracle Single Sign-On and then get app, and it walks you through some stuff. So it's not too hard to do. And then eventually when you come into Eloqua, if you're an admin and have admin rights with being an admin, you can go to the apps area and then you'll see, so for our situation, we'll have various apps in our Eloqua, but I'll search for Zoom and you can see we've got the Zoom app, which when you click on it, it has multiple things that app comes with. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 different features get added to Eloqua that Phil just showed us. So pretty cool. One other thing I want to mention is when you do the external activities, those options that pulled up for Phil with the step on the canvas, you set those up initially here, external activities. Again, you have to be an admin to do this, but you can add your types of external activities. People get confused. I'll just reiterate what Phil said. External activities were created because Eloqua doesn't natively track everything in it. It doesn't know that somebody back in the day when we did in-person events went to your event or trade show. It doesn't know that they went to this Eloqua user group meeting. We have to have Zoom let us know that and push that data into Eloqua. So it's externally sourced, hence the name external activity. So you create those here. So if we had another one we wanted to create, let's see here, paid ad, and then you can add, do your different activity type, and I clicked. So let me just show you the webinar one. I'm not going to save that. Or Eloqua admin. Kristen is probably pooping her pants right now because I'm junking up our Eloqua. Okay, here we go. So webinar, those were the activities we added. So somebody either attended, watched the on-demand, or registered. So you can customize those here. Anyway, that's the cool part of when you go back to the canvas and you have your campaign. And I need to deactivate this anyway. And you want to add the step for the external activity. First of all, don't forget people, we've had a couple of users where they're like, where'd all the steps go in the canvas? This little guy here, collapse it so it's not just showing your favorites that you've starred, but you can go here and just search for external, and then you'll find it, drag it over, and then voila, you can do what Phil did from there to build it out. So anyway, all right, so let me see here. Let me look to see if there are a bunch more questions. People are putting them in the Q&A and chat. That's fun.
As you're going through them there, Karen, I answered a bunch of them. There was one in the chat that mentions, can you lock down individual branded domains? I'm assuming what's being asked by that is whether or not you can prevent certain users from selecting a brand. If that's the question, no. Whatever is set up within that drop down, anyone creating the email would have the ability to select from any available domains that have been set up, but it's something for us to consider down the road possibly.
Okay.
I'd be interested to know more of what the use case is and why you'd want to lock that down. But yeah, definitely something that may have some more conversation around.
Okay. All right. I'm going to try to go through the questions that we have in the Q&A, and then if anybody else has any questions they want to speak and not type into Zoom, let me know. Just chat that, and then I can make it so you can speak. So one of the questions is, any recommendation for capturing time in session from Zoom? So that can definitely pass back to Eloqua. You could push it to a contact field. More likely to want to push it to a custom object. And or if you had to, you could always export that out of Zoom and upload it into the custom object in Eloqua. But there isn't a really granular level of control with deciding what attendee data you pull in from Zoom. It's pretty basic information. So if you wanted to automate it to have all those details like time in session, because I always look at the report, like after this, there's like 60 or so of you guys that are here. There's going to be inevitably a few people that have been here for like 2 minutes and then left, or 30 minutes and then left. So that can make a difference with your follow-up. All right.
There are a couple of offerings out there that do, when you're going for that attended decision rule, then you can actually put for at least kind of 20 minutes, 30 minutes, that sort of thing in there. So but I've not seen that for Zoom.
Okay. I haven't either. Somebody else asked, any update on Webex App by any chance? We can't currently use, as our account is single sign-on only. Yeah, that is a bummer. The free Webex apps for Eloqua, if you do use single sign-on with Webex, it doesn't work with Eloqua. We had somebody else ask about that in the last couple of months. So those are things that I would recommend that you put in the feature request on top liners in order for folks like Scott and other Eloqua product managers to know about that there's enough users asking for it that potentially it would be, actually, you know what? That would be more for Webex, I think, Scott, because they're the ones that build their apps for Eloqua.
Yeah, I think it'd be more for them.
Yeah, yep. Like the what we showed you guys today for Zoom, those app features were all built by Zoom and they're free for Eloqua users. So they're hoping that further adopts you using Zoom as well. All right, let me see here. I think we've got one more. The Zoom app only brings in new people after first activated. Do you just need to remember to deactivate or reactivate, or do you have any other suggestions? Would be nice if there were decision evaluation periods and if segment feeder could be more often, so confirmations in more real time. So I assume this is for registrants and attendees. Hang on, let me try to make sense of this. Do you just need to remember to deactivate? No, Phil, are you seeing this one? It's the one that came through at 11:46. Well, that's my time. I'm trying to think this through.
So I'm assuming this is for the feeders at the top, and I've always used the feeders to pull something in that happened historically, so it would actually pull the all relevant data in at the time. But I don't know if you want to type somewhere if there's a certain use case you were thinking of there.
Yeah, so this is anonymous attendee, so I can't call them by name,
Yeah.
but if you guys would like, feel free to type in more there, or we can follow up. We have only 4 minutes left. I think we've gotten to everything else. Let me just make sure here, guys. Hang on 1 second. So if we wanted to create campaigns based on attendance and engagement, you'd recommend creating a CDO based on this. Yeah, Eric, yes. So whether it's webinar attendance data, registration data, how long they were attending your webinar, survey responses, poll responses, that's all data that you hope that somebody does it more than once, like comes to your webinar more than webinars, I should say, maybe not the same webinar, but if you hold monthly webinars like this one, hopefully they come more than once. So you don't want it to overwrite contact fields with the last webinar's data. For that person. So custom data objects or custom objects are the way that we recommend storing that type of data in Eloqua. And it depends. Some people just have a custom object called, on 24 webinars, and they put both registration and attendee data and polls and everything in there. So keep in mind, guys, every custom object can now hold 250 fields. It used to be 50 fields, but that was increased a couple of years ago by Oracle. So one custom object can hold 250 data elements. So that usually covers everything you'd want to capture for a person about their webinar attendance, any polls they answered during the webinar. If you set up a follow-up survey about that webinar, you can do that all in a custom object. And then, yep, so we're getting confirmation on that other question you guys are talking about, the feeder. Still trying to understand the question a little bit. It only brings in new people once first activated. I'm going to take that one offline. So we've got Emily and somebody that's anonymous. I apologize, guys. I'm not totally wrapping my head around the question, but we will try to help you guys out offline here. We've only got, unless Phil, you had any thoughts?
No, I need the use case to understand why it needs to fire more than once.
Yeah, it's
if we're looking at feeders.
Yep. Okay. And let's see if there's anything else in the chat. I think we've gotten through just about everything. I really appreciate you guys being very engaged here and asking questions. And some people left some comments earlier on in the meeting, so thank you for doing that. So with that, if you haven't watched the show Schitt's Creek, pretty funny. That's a GIF from it on my screen. Oops. And it's a easy half-an-hour TV show. My computer's now fried. Hang on a second, I'm losing my Zoom powers here. All right, I'll stop sharing. Let's see. Bear with me, guys. Technical difficulties. Okay, I have 3 monitors, so it got messed up here. Actually, it wasn't the computer. It was me. Admit it. All right. Thank you guys for attending. Really appreciate it. We'll again get together third Thursday of each month, 11 a.m. Eastern Time, 10 Central, sometime in the afternoon in Europe. And anybody that's here and it's your evening or super earlier time, really appreciate that. We do have a global audience for this. I really appreciate those that are coming in very late your time, and actually definitely for folks in Europe right now, this is obviously into your late afternoon, evening. So appreciate you guys being here. And again, if you would like to ever present this year in one of these user group meetings, I warmly welcome it. Be happy to have you do so and help you to get prepared for it. And then the only other thing is, I think that's actually it. No other things. Thank you guys. I hope you all have a great rest of your Thursday. Stay healthy, stay happy, and we'll catch you next month. Bye, everybody.